The eviction notice felt like a prop from a bad play. The paper too crisp, the ink too starkly black, the legalese too absurdly formal for the raw, earthy reality of my front porch. A man in a cheap, sweat-stained suit, a hired mercenary from a local process-serving company, had just handed it to me. He'd done so with a kind of nervous reverence, as if delivering a royal decree to a condemned man, before scurrying back to his beat-up sedan. The notice, an official-looking document from the county court, gave me 72 hours to vacate the premises for persistent and flagrant violation of community shoreline and docking regulations. I almost laughed. The sound caught in my throat, a dry, humorless rasp. It was like being served an eviction notice from your own house by a particularly delusional goldfish who believed it owned the entire ocean. "You've made a terrible mistake," I said quietly to the nervous-looking man, my voice calm and even. "This property isn't part of your client's HOA. My instructions are just to deliver the notice and document service, sir," he mumbled, his eyes darting around, avoiding mine. He was already backing away toward his car, as if he expected me to erupt in a fit of rage. He didn't understand. I wasn't angry. I was something far colder, far more dangerous to his client's cause. I was legally, historically, and irrefutably correct. I closed the solid pine door, its familiar weight a comfort against my back, and leaned against it, the ridiculous document clutched in my hand. This was the culmination of a year-long war of attrition, a campaign of creeping entitlement and willful ignorance waged by the new, wealthy residents of Sunset Landing against the one thing they couldn't buy, bulldoze, or regulate: me. My name is Ben Carter, and I'm a cartographer and a historical land consultant. I don't just read maps, I understand the stories they tell, the centuries of law, legacy, betrayal, and property rights encoded in their fading, elegant lines and symbols. My family has owned this land since 1888. The property isn't just the half-acre my cabin sits on. It is a unique and unbroken legal parcel that includes the entire 3-mile shoreline of Heron Lake. It is a continuous, 50-foot-deep ribbon of land encircling the entire body of water, a legal buffer between the lake and the world. My great-grandfather, a shrewd and far-sighted man who saw the inevitable tide of development even then, had purchased that specific shoreline parcel in a single, brilliant transaction to preserve the lake's natural bas-mar. Character forever. The vast tracts of farmland and forest behind that shoreline? My family had sold most of that off in the 1990 to the very developers who built Sunset Landing. But we had kept the most important part. The developers had bought the view, but they had not bought the access. The deed of sale, a document I knew by heart, contained an explicit exclusion for Parcel A, the Heron Lake Shoreline Preserve. For decades, this had been a point of quiet, neighborly understanding. The few other families who had homes on the lake knew the rules, because their own deeds acknowledged our ownership of the shoreline. They could use the water, of course, but the shoreline itself, the reeds, the cypress groves, the small sandy coves was, and always had been, our private property. Then came the new wave of residents, a flood of city money and suburban entitlement, and with them, the formation of the Sunset Landing Homeowners Association, led by a woman named Carol Stratton. Carol was the kind of person who believed that a large checkbook and a loud, confident voice could rewrite history. She saw my family's shoreline not as a legally defined piece of private property, but as a messy, unkempt fringe that was ruining the aesthetic of her pristine, million-dollar community. Her first move had been a friendly letter, written on thick, creamy
This audio was created with Podcastle.ai.
Had been a friendly letter, written on thick, creamy stationery, embossed with the HOA's garish swan logo. It suggested a community partnership to beautify and standardize the shoreline for the benefit of all residents. The plan, which she had presumptuously attached, included manicured St. Augustine lawns down to the water's edge. the complete removal of unsightly and hazardous native reeds and cypress knees, and the construction of a large communal boat dock and clubhouse. I had responded with a polite, firm, and deeply detailed letter of my own. I included a certified copy of my deed, a high-resolution scan of the original 1888 plat map, and a brief, 2-page history of the land's legal status. I explained that the shoreline was not a common area, but a private, family-owned nature preserve, and that no such development would ever be permitted. I thought that would be the end of it. Her response was to ignore the legal reality entirely. She began to operate as if my deed and the history it represented didn't exist. She sent out a glossy community newsletter written by her, encouraging residents to fully enjoy their lakefront access. Small, unauthorized docks, built from cheap, pressure-treated lumber, began to appear like mushrooms after a rain. Residents started clearing the natural vegetation in front of their homes with chainsaws and herbicides, creating sterile green lawns that I knew were bleeding fertilizer and pesticides directly into the fragile side lake ecosystem. The crown jewel of her illegal campaign, the monument to her arrogance, was the new Sunset Landing community boat dock. It was a massive steel and composite structure, a floating behemoth with slips for 20 boats and a large party deck, built at great expense directly in front of the HOA's communal clubhouse. It was a flagrant, astonishing act of trespass, an invasion of my land so brazen it was almost breathtaking. I had, of course, followed the proper legal channels. My lawyer, a patient and methodical man, sent a formal cease and desist order via courier during the dock's construction. It was ignored, in fact. Carol had posted a picture of the letter on the community's social media page with the caption, "Look at the lovely fan mail we received from our grumpy neighbor." Once the dock was completed, I had no choice but to file a formal lawsuit for trespass, damages, and a court order for the dock's removal. The legal process was slow, a grinding of gears that had been going on for months. In the meantime, the HOA and its residents acted as if the dock and the entire shoreline was theirs by divine right. Which brought me to this eviction notice. This was her counterattack, a move of stunning audacity. The violation they cited was my refusal to pay the thousands of dollars in fines they had retroactively levied against me for my own non-compliant dock, the small, wooden one my grandfather had built 70 T years ago. They were fining me for a structure on my own land, and now they were using those manufactured, illegitimate fines as a pretext to evict me from that same land. It was a legal strategy born of pure, distilled arrogance and a profound ignorance of the law. I looked out the window at the massive, gleaming boat dock that was the source of all this conflict. Carol and a group of her friends were there, laughing and drinking wine in the afternoon sun, their voices carrying across the water. They were likely celebrating their latest move, their final solution to the problem of me. They believed this flimsy piece of paper in my hand was a checkmate. I folded the eviction notice and placed it neatly on my desk, next to the thick, leather-bound folder that contained my family's century-old deeds and the original, hand-drawn map of the lake. They had built their shining new kingdom on a foundation of blissful ignorance. They had no idea that the quiet cartographer in the old cabin didn't just own the land their dock was on. He owned the very ground beneath their feet when they walked to it. They were about to receive a very public, very expensive education in the enduring power of a properly recorded property line. The sheriff's deputy arrived the next afternoon, not with the sirens and flashing lights Carol Stratton had likely envisioned, but with the quiet, weary professionalism of a man who had seen too many petty neighborhood disputes turn ugly. His name was Miller, and he was an old-timer, a man whose family had been in the county for as long as mine had. He knew the land, and he knew the law. He met me on my porch, holding a copy of the eviction order, his expression carefully neutral. Carol was right there with him, of course, standing a few feet back on what she considered her turf. She had gathered a small audience of her HOA board members to witness her final victory, her face a mask of smug, triumphant certainty. "Mr. Carter," Deputy Miller began, his voice a gravelly baritone that seemed to carry the weight of his years of service. "I have a court-ordered eviction notice here, filed by the Sunset Landing Homeowners Association. They're claiming you're in violation of community covenants and are refusing to vacate the property." "Good afternoon, Deputy," I said calmly, nodding respectfully. To him, "I appreciate you coming all the way out here, but I'm afraid the court has been presented with a fraudulent claim based on a fundamental misrepresentation of property ownership. This property, including the entire shoreline of the lake on which their development sits, is not, and has never been, a part of the Sunset Landing HOA." Carol let out a sharp, theatrical laugh, a sound designed to signal my absurdity to the assembled audience. "He's delusional, officer. Our community surrounds the lake. We have riparian rights. It's common sense. He's just a bitter old holdout who refuses to play by the same rules as everyone else." Deputy Miller looked from her to me, his expression unreadable. He was a man who dealt in facts, not feelings. "Well, sir, the HOA has provided a copy of their master plan and their recorded bylaws. It seems pretty clear they consider the shoreline a common area under their jurisdiction." I'm sure they do," I said, allowing myself a small, wry smile. "But considering something yours and legally owning it are two very different things. If you'll give me one moment, I can clear this all up for you and save the county a great deal of time and trouble." I went back inside my cabin and returned with my heavy, leather-bound folder. I didn't open it right away. I simply held it, letting the weight of it feel solid and real in my hands. "Deputy," I said, "before we look at my documents, could you please ask Ms. Stratton to show you, on her own glossy master plan, the exact location of the Sunset Landing Community Boat Dock?" A flicker of confusion crossed the deputy's face, but he complied. He unfolded the large, colourful map the HOA had provided, a beautiful piece of marketing material. Carol leaned over it eagerly, her finger stabbing at the prominent location of their prized dock. "It's right there," she said proudly. "The centrepiece of our community. The jewel of Sunset Landing. And could you please show the deputy the legally recorded easement, the title, or the deed that grants your HOA the right to have a permanent structure on Pummy?" "That specific piece of land?" I asked, my voice still quiet and even. Her confident expression wavered for the first time. It's a common area. It's part of the shoreline. It belongs to all of us. It's for the community. That's an interesting legal theory, but it's not how property law works," I said. I finally opened my folder and pulled out the original 1888 plat map. Its linen paper yellowed with age, but its ink still sharp and clear as the day it was drawn. I laid it carefully on my porch railing. "This, Deputy, is the foundational document for every single parcel of land that touches this lake. As you can see, it clearly delineates Parcel A, the entire, unbroken 50-foot deep..."
This audio was created with podcastle.ai.
Delineates Parcel A, the entire, unbroken 50-foot deep shoreline of Heron Lake as a single private property deeded to my great-grandfather, Thomas Carter. The land your housing development is on was sold off from the larger tract in 1994, but the deed of sale, which I also have here, explicitly excludes Parcel A from the DAS. Transfer of title. I then pulled out a more recent, certified survey map, the one prepared for my lawsuit. This is a survey from last year. It shows that the Sunset Landing Community Boat Dock, all 200 feet of it, is not built on a common area. It is built entirely on my private property, Parcel A, without my permission. The eviction notice she has filed against me is a retaliatory, bad faith, legal action, designed to harass and intimidate me into dropping my own legitimate lawsuit against her and the HOA for criminal trespass and property damage. Deputy Miller studied the old map, then the new one. He looked at the location of the dock on the HOA's map, and then he looked directly at Carol. The weary expression on his face was gone, replaced by a cold, hard anger. He was an officer of the law, and he did not appreciate being used as an unwitting pawn in a fraudulent legal action designed to steal a man's home. "Ma'am," he said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous tone that made the air feel heavy. "Is this true? Is your community boat dock built on land that you do not own?" Carol's face went pale. It's a simple misunderstanding of the boundaries," the developer said. "It seems pretty clear to me," the deputy snapped, his patience gone. "You have built a massive, permanent structure on this man's land, and now you are attempting to use a fraudulent eviction notice based on fines related to his own dock on his own land to remove him from his home. That is a serious abuse of the legal process. It may even constitute perjury." He folded up the eviction notice and handed it back to me. "Sir, I am disregarding this notice. I would advise you to give this to your attorney immediately." He then turned back to Carol, his voice as hard as iron. "As for your dock, it is an illegal structure built on private land. As of this moment, it is considered the central piece of evidence in an ongoing criminal trespass investigation. I am ordering you and all your residents to stay off it. I will be posting official notices if I see so much as a footprint on bar. That dock, I will make arrests. Am I clear?" He wasn't done. "And for filing a false report and attempting to procure a fraudulent eviction, you can expect a call from the district attorney's office. I'd advise you to find a very good lawyer, Ms. Stratton." The colour drained completely from Carol's face. Her audience of board members began backing away slowly, their faces a mixture of fear and dawning fury at their leader, who had just exposed them all to a legal and financial catastrophe of epic proportions. In the end, it was a total, unmitigated rout. The court threw out their eviction case before it even began, and awarded me summary judgment in my own lawsuit. The HOA was ordered to remove their $200,000 dock from my property at their own expense and pay me a six-figure sum in damages and legal fees. Facing financial ruin and potential legal charges, Carol was ousted as president in a furious, marathon emergency meeting of the homeowners. A few weeks later, I sat on my own small wooden dock, watching a crew with a barge and a massive crane painstakingly dismantle the monument to Carol's arrogance, piece by piece. The Sunset Landing residents now had the lake views they had paid for, but the shoreline, the beautiful, wild ribbon of land that separated their perfect lawns from the water, remained what it had always been, mine. The quiet cartographer had taught the paper king of Sunset Landing that some lines, drawn long ago in faded ink, are more powerful and permanent than any amount of money or ambition.